Happy Southern California Water Dialogue. We have an interesting discussion with two working examples of programs on dealing with water replenishment. I believe first up we have Evelyn Cortez Davis. Just a few housekeeping. Dee Zink will be joining us soon for the Metropolitan Water District. She is the co-chair with me. I represent the Southern California Watershed and other groups. We have a steering committee who we rely on for our monthly calls to put together future dialogues, and we welcome any topics or ideas you might have as well. I want to thank all of our steering committee. Our basic ground rules are, if you have technical difficulties or if you see something we need to fix, please use the chat feature, but do not use that for the asking a question. The questions and answers come after the speakers. They'll actually be run by Dee. If she's not on, then I'll go ahead and run. Type in a question and click select. You can actually upgrade the questions if you have an interest in it. If you have a poor connection, move closer to your wireless router and turn off other services, including any other bandwidth like Netflix. Or if you really are having a problem, you can cut off your video as well. Make sure your audio is muted. Well, actually, you don't have to, it's automatic. And we go about an hour and then leave the rest of the time for our dialogue. Again, how to ask a question on the bottom of your screen. You have the small Q&A. Type it in. And again, you can upgrade it with thumbs up and move it up the queue. So quick discussion, we've already done this. And here are our speakers. I want to thank both Evelyn Cortez Davis, who we've all known and seen her at various positions, and now she's the Director of Water and Engineering Technical Services, another longtime water director and involved in these issues. Rob Catherman will talk about the Water Replenishment District and their brackish water desalting. With that, I'd ask Evelyn to take it away, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Connor, and to Kathy and Caldwell and Dee and the entirety of the Southern California Water Dialogue Committee. We appreciate the opportunity to bring you an update on our San Fernando Groundwater Basin Remediation Program. And I'm going to see if I have control over the slides here and get started. And yes, okay. I'm going to go briefly over what the program is about and talk to you more specifically about the various project sites we're working on. There are 3, North Hollywood West, North Hollywood Central, and it's a Hunga Wellfield Treatment Project. And then we'll talk about program schedule and cost. But first, before we get going, talking really more about the program objectives in general. There are 4. We want to protect public health and the environment, limit migration of contaminants, remove the contaminants from the basin, and what's driving really our program from LADWP's perspective first and foremost is to restore the beneficial use of the San Fernando Basin for the benefit of the city of Los Angeles. So what are we doing and why is it important? Typically, groundwater has supplied about 10% of our water supply, but in times of severe dry periods, droughts, etc., groundwater has been able to supply up to 21% of our supply. We want to be able to restore this ability. However, many of our groundwater wells have been over the past few decades been removed from the ability to pump them reliably has been severely constrained because of contamination impacts. We have 115 total groundwater wells here. Just over a third of them can be pumped reliably. So this is part of a larger strategy for the city of Los Angeles to be more locally reliable in order for us to do this, groundwater is a key component of that. Recycled water, stormwater capture, and conservation, of course, make up the other pieces of the puzzle, but groundwater is a central cornerstone piece of our groundwater, of our water supply strategy in general for the city of Los Angeles. So we want to be able to restore this access to all the groundwater basins. We're going to be focusing on the San Fernando groundwater basin today, but we do have groundwater rights also in the Central Basin, the West Coast Basin, and a few other smaller basins as well. But the largest adjudication of water rights for us to be able to pump water into the city of Los Angeles system is from the San Fernando groundwater basin. That's what we are focusing on this program today. So we'll get started and going over the projects here. Next. I'm a little bit stuck here, Gary.
Let me see if I can. Go ahead and try again.
So I'll talk about the extent of the contamination next, and here it is. Okay, so the primary contaminants of concern we're talking about are volatile organic compounds, TCE and PCE, and also 1,4-dioxane. What you're looking at here is the TCE/PCE plume in the San Fernando Valley area. And so it is fairly extensive. These are published maps by the US EPA, and the boundaries of the plume, as you can see, are fairly wide. And so focusing on how to extract water and maximize the amount of contaminant that we can remove is important, and it was very strategic in the way that we selected the extraction locations. The other contaminant of concern is 1,4-dioxane, and you can see the extent of the contamination here as well, and the location of the wells. And these are the three projects that we're going to be covering today with relation to the location of the 1,4-dioxane plume. So our recommended treatment process is advanced oxidation with ultraviolet light and hydrogen peroxide. And so I'll just walk you through the different pieces here. Groundwater is pumped throughout the remediation wells and goes through two pre-treatment steps: sand separators and cartridge filters to remove sediment. And after the pre-treatment, peroxide is injected, and the water with the peroxide is then passed through the ultraviolet advanced oxidation process. The ultraviolet light basically reacts with the ultraviolet light energizes hydroxyl radicals, which basically breaks apart the bonds in the molecules of the contaminants that we're trying to treat. After the ultraviolet light treatment, the water then goes through granular activated carbon vessels to remove any excess hydrogen peroxide. After that, we have traditional disinfection treatment in order to be able to introduce the water into our distribution system. And of course, the GAC vessels do need to be flushed and backwashed every once in a while. When we do, we have a backwash waste tank that is the next animation here. Thank you, Gary, for your help. That the resulting water from the backwash system goes into the sewer. All three of the facilities, as you'll see, and I'll advance, we'll walk through the layout of each facility. All of them are very similar. The capacity of each of the facilities is shown here. At completion, we expect the North Hollywood West treatment facility to have 28 cubic feet per second of capacity, roughly 21,000 acre feet per year. North Hollywood Central is the second largest, which is 38 cubic feet per second capacity. And the Tahanga is the largest at 76 cubic feet per second. The North Hollywood West facility has been constructed by our in-house construction forces and was designed by our owner's agent team, Hayes Square and Arcadis, and also supported by Worley Parsons and other key team members. The facility treats 5 wells that are on site, and it's adjacent to Whitsett Wheatfields Park in the San Fernando Valley next to the 170 freeway. And the water basically flows like we shown in the schematic earlier, first through the pretreatment, then through the hydrogen peroxide injection, and then through the ultraviolet advanced oxidation process. We have 4 reactors in the UV building, and after passing through the UV, the granular activating carbon will remove any excess peroxide. This is again the smallest of the projects. Show you an aerial photo of more recent aerial photo of what the facility looks like now. We have sorry, thank you. For the first 2 years, the facility will operate roughly 16,000 acre feet per year capacity so that we can concentrate the plume. We're going to be pumping 3 of the remediation wells, and in order to be able to basically focus the plume into the area where we're treating it. And after the first 2 years, we expect to be able to treat nearly 21,000 acre feet with additional 2 wells coming online. So the North Hollywood West project is just about 95% complete, a little over 94. And the UV system performance testing was done in December. We are doing performance testing soon for the GAC system, the granular activated carbon, and then our commissioning process for the Division of Drinking Water will be starting later this spring with our DWP commissioning process going in the fall of this year. To go over the North Hollywood Central Treatment Facility, we have, again, a similar process for the water. We have strainers for the pre-treatment and then an injection of peroxide dosing. And you can see the storage there, some pretty large storage containers for our hydrogen peroxide. Then the water will flow through the UV reactors in the AOP building. And then the water will flow through the granular activated carbon to remove excess peroxide. Then there's ammonia and fluoridation that's taking place also on site. The reactors at this facility are some of the largest in known reactors of their kind, 384 lamps, UV lamps per reactor. And we have, I believe we have 5 reactors at this facility. And so it's a fairly extensive system that we have at the North Hollywood Central Treatment Facility. Go to the next. This is an aerial photo of what the facility looks like. In contrast to our North Hollywood West, as you can tell, it's an extremely high density residential area. These are multifamily homes that you are seeing around the perimeter of the facility. So it does constrain, it has constraints that some of the other sites do not, and has challenged our engineering and construction teams to do a lot in a smaller footprint where we don't have as much room, much place to go. But all of the components have been successfully put in, and this facility is making extremely good progress toward completion at the later this year. What you would see if you were standing on the ground here, the strainers, self-cleaning strainers that are used to remove the larger particles, sediment, and debris, and anything that's from the extraction of the groundwater. Then we have the 3 hydrogen peroxide tanks, each 13,000 gallons, and then the chemical building that will store ammonia and fluoride for disinfection after the water has gone through the groundwater treatment process. Upcoming milestones: the construction will be complete. We are targeting to finish the construction later this year. We're about 90% now, 89%. Next steps will be performance testing and commissioning process in the spring with DDW and our DWP commissioning process for the latter part of this year. For the Tujunga Wellfield Treatment Facility, we have a number of existing facilities that we needed to also work around, but a little bit larger footprint for this facility. This treatment facility will treat water from 9 out of the 12 wells at the Tujunga Wellfield, which is located at the same location. Water from wells 6 to 12 will go through the pre-treatment and peroxide dosing like the other facilities, and then go through the UV reactors as well, and go through the granular activated carbon for the removal of excess peroxide. There are 2 wells here that will only go through granular activated carbon, and the reason is that they are not affected by the 1,4-dioxane plume that does affect this particular area. I did not mention for North Hollywood West the driving the controlling contaminant is 1,4-dioxane. For this facility, the controlling contaminant are VOCs, PCE and TC. So we have an aerial photo here showing you the progress, and it's a fairly large construction site. We are adjacent to the Tujunga spreading ground. If you've been to the Tujunga area, you may have noticed that recently they have had water in there. It's a high, a very critical facility for us because it plays a number of different roles. It is a well field. It is a functioning stormwater spreading basin. It is a pumping station into the distribution system, and also a now as of the completion of this project will be a groundwater treatment facility as well. So 4 critical roles, and we'll be able to restore some of the access to the wells that have been affected by contamination. Looking at what you would see if you were on the site today, the UV AOP facility on the left, 5 reactors plus 1 backup, and also 384 lamps per reactor, the largest arrays in the Western United States, probably one of the largest in the country as well. The middle picture here is the waste tank that will be used when the GAC vessels are backwashed and need flushing. And then the GAC vessels on the right, there's 36 total on site for the Tujunga Wellfield project. And some of them are primarily for quenching peroxide, but others will be specifically for VOC treatment as well. Next up, Tujunga upcoming milestones. We are nearing 90% completion for construction right now, and performance testing is the same time frame as North Hollywood Central coming up in the spring. We've been coordinating all along with our public health partners at the Division of Drinking Water. And so this summer, we will be starting the commissioning process for this, the Division of Drinking Water commissioning process, and our commissioning process will be at the very latest part of this year. So program schedule, we have been working on this program for quite some time. The owner's agent contract, in fact, we awarded back in 2015. And so Hazen and Sawyer was brought on board to help us as our expert. North Hollywood West construction being completed by our in-house construction team. DWP started in September of 2017. The North Hollywood Central and Tujunga Wellfield project began in November 2020, the construction, but that team was brought on board sooner so that they could start the design build process. It was being delivered through a progressive design build process. And the team that is helping us with that is Kiewit as the construction contractor, and then Stantec as our design consultant. For the North Hollywood Central and Tahunga well field, we are targeting to be operational in the winter this year and fall of 2023 for North Hollywood West. Let's talk about money, because none of this is free. The program cost is significant. Totaling all three facilities, the cost is $640 million, and $308 million is the Prop 1 grant funding that was secured for this program. So far, we have already been reimbursed $74 million, and the importance of the Prop 1 funding cannot be overstated. Every dollar that was secured through Prop 1 will offset ratepayer investment. Anything else that is not covered by Prop 1, our intent is to make sure that we are proceeding forward in a way that preserves our ability to recover costs from potentially responsible parties in the future. We do have some acknowledgements to an important team here from the State Water Resources Control Board's Division of Financial Assistance, the Division of Drinking Water, and the LA Regional Water Quality Control Board, that together with our technical team at DWP and our owner's agent team, make up the technical advisory committee for this program. We have been meeting pretty much nonstop since long before the construction of the first project began. So it is really because of the effort of this committee that we've been able to secure approvals for the next step to proceed. So just wanted to acknowledge the team here, Diana Conkle and her team over at the Division of Financial Assistance, CHDIP at Division of Drinking Water and his team, and all of our partners at the Regional Water Quality Control Board. So that is all I had for you today. I'm really looking forward to our discussion together to hear what kind of questions the group will have for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Evelyn. I'm sure it's already brought up some questions, and thank you for all of the updates and information. I know it's a long-running project. So next we have Rob Catherman from the Water Replenishment District. Take it away, Rob.
Yeah, Connor, thank you. And Evelyn, great job. And it's really nice to see young women involved in engineering projects. And we've worked with you for the last several years on our Hyperion planning, and it's been a real pleasure. So Water Replenishment District, we manage groundwater for 420 square miles. We have utilized reclaimed water for replenishment. 2 years after we were started, today, all of our replenishment, or nearly all of our replenishment, is basically reclaimed sewage. So our motto is the future of groundwater is purified poop water. Let's go next. Climate change. We all have heard about climate change. We recognized the effect of climate change over 50 years ago, and in particular 20 years ago. Next. Metropolitan produced this slide showing that we have had a 30% reduction of precipitation here in our basins over the last half century. Next. So new rules. Climate change was causing drought as our new normal. We've had the driest 20 years in the last 1,000 years, as you all know. And so the solution short term is water conservation, something we can all do and something we can do it on a daily basis. Long term, purified poop water from local sources. Next. So what's happening? Why are we having such an issue? Even in years when we have gotten sufficient snowpack and stormwater. This slide shows a couple of years ago, we got here in the Sierras 72%, and the Rockies 88% of the snowpack, but we got less than a third of that going into the Colorado River, and about 40% of it going into the Sacramento Delta. So the heat that has caused the atmosphere to warm absorbs more water. You have more evapotranspiration from plants, and the ground is drier. So all that results in a lot less runoff in our two systems. Next. So let's go back a little bit and look at the history of water in the South Bay. Next. Of course, overpumping from the beginning of the 20th century up through the middle of the century caused water levels to drop precipitously as urbanization occurred and more water was used. So we had our wells going dry, and that resulted in seawater intrusion along the coasts on the west and the south. Next. So this is a little graphic showing that seawater intrusion basically in three locations to the north and east of the Palos Verdes Peninsula, and then over at the boundary between LA and Orange County. So WRD was established in 1959 by a vote of the people to pay for replenishment water, which was originally 100% imported water. Next. So back after World War II, the leaders in the South Bay decided we need to do something about this seawater intrusion. First was to create the West Basin Municipal Water District by a vote to tax themselves, almost 13%, believe it or not, to be able to buy imported water to supplement groundwater. Next, they filed a judgment. Next, we filed a judgment to cap the amount of pumping that was concluded after almost a decade of litigation, and cap pumping at a little over 280,000 acre feet. That is more than the basin can replenish. That is about 100% more than the safe yield of the basin. So how do you make up that other 50% of the water that's being pumped? So that's where WRD came into being. In order to combat the seawater intrusion, the County Flood Control built 16 miles of injection wells along the West Coast to inject imported fresh water to stop seawater intrusion, and about 70% of that water ends up migrating inland to replenish the West Basin. Subsequently, they built the seawater barriers along the two ports, what we call the Dominguez Gap barrier, and then on the east part of Long Beach and west part of Orange County for the Alamedas barrier. So as I said, WRD was formed in 1959, again by a vote, to replenish our aquifers and to protect groundwater quality. Next. So there's a map of our district, 420 square miles. We provide, and we've got 4 million residents. It's about 10% of the state. In fact, it's a little more, I guess, now that people are leaving California. We provide basically half of the potable water in our service area. The other half, of course, is still imported water. So our job is to replenish those groundwater basins and make up what Mother Nature can no longer provide. Next. So our sources of water, stormwater capture and recycle water into the spreading grounds, and now recycle water into injection wells at our three barriers. And we have just built our first inland injection well over in Long Beach using water. We'll be using water from the our Vanderlands Advanced Treated Water Plant. Next. So our job to manage the basin, of course, is to monitor groundwater and to check for chemicals. So we test for over 200 chemicals now in all of our wells, and we have 300 locations throughout the basin. And then where there are areas of contamination, and our basins, we are more fortunate than the San Fernando Valley. The valley, as is the San Gabriel Valley, are basically big sand pits. So whatever contamination enters at the surface goes directly into the aquifer. We have layers of aquifer interspersed with clay, aquatards they call them, where the water from the surface cannot percolate directly into the aquifer. And I'll show you that in a minute. We'll move on. Next. Yeah, so our three sources of replenishment are the barriers, West Coast, Dominguez Gap, and Alamitas. We provide about 30,000 acre feet of water into those barriers, but the majority of our water is spread in the percolation basins, which are the San Gabriel and Rio Hondo rivers as they come through the San Gabriel Mountains, and at Montebello, 605 and 60 freeway, if you can visualize that. Over 100,000 acre feet is produced there. Half of that is normally stormwater. The other half, when we started, was all imported water. Today, that's all reclaimed water from the county sanitation district plant. Let's move on. Next. So we started a program back in 2004 as I joined the board of directors. And this chart shows the blue imported water, 100% when we started back in 1959. Shortly thereafter, 3 years later, 1962, you see the purple commence. That was the first water from a reclamation plant utilized for groundwater replenishment. So that was kind of a historic event. We just celebrated our 60th anniversary of getting reclaimed water from the county sanitation district. 2004, fast forward, as the district had worked over the years to gradually reduce imported water and increase recycled water and capture stormwater. We said we recognize the effects of seawater intrusion and climate change as threatening our basin. So we said we need to start pushing this quicker. And so we started the Water Independence Now to eliminate our need for imported water. And that was completed in 2019 with the completion of our advanced water treatment plant in Pico Rivera, which allows us to take the last 20,000 acre feet of water for spreading and now makes us completely free of imported water. We no longer purchase from the Central Basin Municipal Water District, allowing that water to be used elsewhere in the metropolitan service area. Next slide. So our water independence now, this just shows we eliminated the demand for imported water, increased our water capture through stormwater, and increased our advanced recycled water treatment. So before, when we had imported water, was about a little over 25% of our water replenishment portfolio, and after when it is now zero. Next. So what do we do now for an encore? We've been working with the LA Department of Water and Power to plan utilization of their treated Hyperion water when that project is completed, and more immediately with the Metropolitan Water District to provide treated water for first injection into the West Coast and Central Basin, and then ultimately spreading up in our spreading grounds. And then finally, the water will be pushed up to the San Gabriel Valley and then further east from there. So our two basins have over 450,000 acre feet of unused storage space, and that's represented by the light brown color at the top of the graph there. 120 in the West Basin and 330 in the Central Basin. We also have unused adjudicated pumping rights of over 30,000 acre feet each year in both basins that we want to utilize in the future. And then the purple shows what our current groundwater pumping is in the two basins. So we're going to develop storage projects utilizing that almost 500,000 acre feet and augmentation projects. And an augmentation project simply means that you use the water each year that you put in. Storage can be put in and utilized over subsequent years moving forward. So between the two of them, we are hoping that in the next decade and a half that we will be completely free of imported water for our groundwater, for our use in this groundwater basin. Next. So this is a complicated map of where we're getting our water, but basically you can see on the left part of the map, you see Hyperion, which will become a regional supply for the north and western part of our basin, and perhaps for the seawater barrier, although it looks like we're actually going to get seawater barrier now from the Metropolitan District and the joint plant, which is in the middle of the slide. If you can see the purple water droplet there, that is the regional plant that Metropolitan and the County Sanitation District are joint venturing to treat water. So that will provide a replenishment for our basin. It will provide water to service the brackish water reclamation program. Once we pull the brackish water out of the ground, we've got about 200,000 acre feet of brackish water, which is salty water, not nearly as salty as ocean water, but too salty to drink. Ocean water is 30 to 35,000 parts per million of dissolved solids. The brackish water in the West Basin is 500 to 5,000 parts per million. So we're using advanced treated water technology, which is basically ocean desal technology, reverse osmosis, microfiltration to treat that water. We are also taking water from the Terminal Island treatment plant, which we're utilizing in the Dominguez Gap barrier. And then lastly, a small amount of water from the purple dot on the right-hand side of the map will be split between the south, where we're going to take additional water from that to serve and be treated by the advanced treatment plant we call Vanderlands, and then part of it will be pushed probably north to the spreading grounds. Next slide. So the Torrance desalter I mentioned, originally built in 2002, treats about 2.5 million gallons a day. 6 years ago, we expanded that plant to double its capacity to 5 million gallons. And this is not reclaimed sewage. This is treated salty groundwater. So this water goes directly into the City of Torrance distribution system and is used as potable water. Again, you can see the reverse osmosis membranes there, long tubes of extremely tightly packed filtration material that separates the salt out. And in the center, you can see there's a small tube in each one of those large cylinders. That is where the purified water travels and is taken out of the tubes at the end of the process. Next. So this is a picture of where the brackish water is located, south of the San Diego south and west of the San Diego Freeway. The darker colors indicate the higher concentrations of the plume. So we're planning to build a doubling of the current brackish water plant in Torrance. This will provide an immediate 5 million additional 5 million gallons a day of potable water. We'll clean up the groundwater aquifer to allow it to be utilized to its fullest extent for its annual pumping allocation, and then ultimately for groundwater storage and augmentation in the basin, taking advantage of the 200,000 acre feet of storage capacity in addition to the existing unused storage of 130,000 acre feet. So this is going to be a tremendous benefit to future generations. Next slide. And I want to thank you. One thing I would like to say that's actually not in the slide presentation, that we have been doing groundwater cleanup projects since 1994. We also have a lot of VOC contamination in the groundwater, but because of the aquatards and basically the layering of aquifer and aquatards, it's been confined to the northerly part of our basins, primarily in Central Basin. West Basin is a what they call a pressure zone, where you have aquatard at the surface. So the water cannot percolate from the surface, and the contaminants therefore cannot percolate from the surface. So we have been cleaning up water since 1994, and we spent $30 million or more doing it. Most recently, we have a Vernon perchlorate system, which is $7.5 million that we got from Prop 1 money, and we have just begun that perchlorate cleanup. Next, of course, is PFAS, which we're all aware of. We have been funding wellhead treatment projects for our Central Basin pumpers surrounding the Montebello forebay area and the Rio Hondo and San Gabriel rivers, where water has been percolated into the aquifer there. That water course contained PFAS contamination. So we've budgeted $60 million and have allocated about half of that now to specific projects for 13 pumpers that will eventually receive the money, and over 35 wells, which we will be able to keep and return to service. So that, in summary, is what we're proposing to do to take full advantage of our groundwater basin that we're so very fortunate to have. Thank you, and happy to answer your questions.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dee Zink, and it's a pleasure to be with you all today. I'm just going to walk through, if I could, a reminder about how we handle questions at the dialogue. And I believe Gary's going to queue up a slide just to remind everybody. Thank you, Gary. Okay, most people know how to use Zoom. Some people are more familiar with the direct Zoom than the webinar. We're asking everybody to put their questions in the Q&A and not the chat. And so far, it looks like everybody's doing that. If you like a question, give it a thumbs up and it'll pop to the top of the list. And I'm going to go through the list in that order. So without further ado, could we go? There we go. We're going to go ahead and thank both of our speakers, who I think both have their cameras on. Evelyn, if you could put your microphone on, then maybe we'll see both of you. Not sure. So our first question actually is for you, Evelyn, except for now it's just changed because we got another one with a thumbs up. So let me go ahead and take Diane Wallace's question, which is there a reason that all of the contaminated wells are on the east side of the valley and the west side of the valley are okay. I do think this is for you, Evelyn, in terms of the challenges that you've been trying to address with the treatment.
It is an excellent question, and it is basically a hydrogeology driven reason. It is about what's under the ground and how water moves under the San Fernando Valley. In fact, we don't have very many wells in the West Valley at all because water does not move underground as easily as it does in the eastern side of the San Fernando Valley. So our well fields are actually located primarily in the East Valley in the first place. So the contamination, as well as water, has been able to move more rapidly in the East Valley. And that's part of why you saw the shape of the plume the way that you saw it. And it's primarily in the eastern side of the valley. The water is moving at a much faster rate in this area of the valley than in the western. Water does move generally in the southeast direction. If you think of the San Fernando Valley, roughly like a rectangle, it's moving toward the southeast corner of that rectangle, the water, but it's moving at different rates depending on where you are. And so that is why historically our well fields were located in the eastern part of the valley, and that's where the contamination has actually migrated to the groundwater, and why the plumes are where they are now. It's a great question.
Thank you, Evelyn. You probably covered this, and I apologize. I joined a couple minutes late today. Can you just maybe restate how much of your water comes from the groundwater supplies for the Department of Water and Power?
So yes, roughly about 10 or 11% of our water comes from groundwater on average. But in past years where it's been necessary to pump at a higher rate because of droughts or extended dry periods like we're in now, we have had the capacity of pumping up to 21% of our supply being groundwater. That is not possible right now because of the contamination, which is what's driving the necessity for our program.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, our next question's from Charming Evelyn, and she's interested in what are you doing with the waste? How are we disposing of the waste after the treatment of this supply?
So that's a good question. The primary waste would be backwash water or the spent GAC media. If there's other types of waste, maybe we can get some clarification from Charming about that, the question. But for the backwash water that does go to sewer, which is intentional for us to be able to, in the future, be able to capture that water once it gets routed to either Donaldson, Tillman, or Hyperion, we'll be able to recapture some of that water for reuse. And the GAC spent media will be sent to a contractor to handle the media, either to recharge it. I believe they do it by reheating the media to remove the contaminants, and then it can be reused. However, we will be utilizing virgin media in our GAC vessels. And if you think about it, it's like a ginormous Brita filter. That's what those GAC vessels are like.
Okay, thank you very much.
Did I just say ginormous? I think I did.
You did, but that's okay. We understand
a large
ginormous.
Brita filter.
We understand it.
Evelyn, I love it. I love it.
It's a technical term there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, our next question is from Leslie Purcell, and the question is, what are or were the sources of contamination, and are they no longer polluting the groundwater? And I think if you could, Evelyn, if you could go beyond the technical term, if there is a sense of where some of these contaminants are coming from.
Sure. So in general, there are areas where there's very specific sources that have been identified, and the responsibility for identifying the polluters, the sources of the pollution, is on the Environmental Protection Agency's area of responsibility. So where they have identified specific facilities or owners of facilities that have contributed to the contamination, there have been orders for cleanup. So one example is the North Hollywood Operable Unit, which is located not far from our North Hollywood Central Groundwater Treatment Facility for us. But it is very localized, and we are actually partnered with Honeywell in a collaborative fix to improve that remedy at the North Hollywood Operable Unit. That is a separate facility that is in the general area where our remediation is. If you look back at the source in general, there were activities in the San Fernando Valley going back as far as the World War II era that preceded that existed before clean water regulations existed, before hazardous waste disposal regulations existed. So it is presumed that some of the contaminants that were byproducts of manufacturing processes in the San Fernando Valley, including even defense industry related activities or other, that there may have been disposal that impacted both the ground and ultimately migrated into groundwater. So we don't, in some cases, don't have specific potentially responsible parties or polluters that have been identified or ordered to do cleanup. In other cases, we do. And so in the areas that we opted to pursue groundwater treatment proactively for the city of Los Angeles, it is because we know that although ultimately we want to be able to pursue reimbursement from these potentially responsible parties, that process is a legal one and it will take a long time to do that. And we did not have any more time left to regain use of our groundwater basin. So the source itself is the chemicals that were used in these manufacturing processes, and there's a variety of different sources. For example, for 1,4-dioxane, paint strippers, dyes, grease, varnishes. That's what 1,4-dioxane is used for, and then improper storage, handling, and disposal of VOCs and other hazardous chemicals that contain VOCs because of industrial activity. That's what
And VOCs, volatile organic compounds?
Volatile organic compounds, and in this particular case, trichloroethylene and perchloroethylene, PCE and TCE.
Okay. So for those that are not as familiar with drinking water quality issues or other water quality issues, they might not be familiar with those terms, but these are historic contaminants that we're dealing with in many of the urban areas and across the nation. So thank you for that answer. And it goes right into the next question, which you partially answered in your presentation, but the question was, what will all the San Fernando, sorry, this is from Grant Hogue, what will all of the San Fernando well field decontamination projects cost the ratepayers? So you're trying to go after responsible polluters, responsible parties. You're trying to get access to funds, but there is a gap there. Do you have a sense of the cost?
Right. So at the moment, there is an active investment by ratepayers of the city of Los Angeles that is the balance of what is not currently covered by our Prop 1 grants. However, that balance, which is about $300 million for these 3 projects, there are other projects that we are exploring at this point, studying the southern part of the San Fernando Basin, where we have additional well fields that are not treated by these 3 projects. And we want to be able to gain access to those well fields as well. It may require additional treatment at these other facilities, but we are in the process of conducting a remedial investigation right now to determine what the characterization is of the contamination around those well fields. We don't have at this point a good forecast on what, if any, those treatment facilities will cost. They are located within the San Fernando Basin as well, but I can tell you that they are more than likely going to be smaller in scale than what we've seen for these 3 facilities that we are already pursuing. The reality is that if there is any extraction that is going to take place out of any groundwater basin. We don't have a lot of groundwater basins that are pristine, that are not impacted by some level of contamination, unfortunately. So we have to bear that in mind and preserve the wells that are not yet impacted by contamination and preventing them from becoming contaminated. And that is where our partnership comes in with the Division of Drinking Water and the Regional Water Quality Control Board. So in terms of the total cost at the end, Grant, we're going to talk this over once we have a little bit more data on upcoming projects. For these 3 projects, the tab really ultimately will be determined by how much we are able to recover from the potentially responsible parties in the future.
Okay, and we're going to keep you on the hot seat, Evelyn. So take a breath for a
Keep it
second
coming.
here. This next question is from John Earl, and I don't know if you're going to be able to answer it, but the question is that LADWP has deployed 3 treatment facilities at the Superfund site to filter up to 87,000 acre-feet per year, or nearly a fifth of what LA consumes a year, with the goal of increasing that to 70% by 2035. So I don't know if those numbers are all they comport to what you're saying. The question, though, is, that said, how long until LA City will or can stop taking water from Mono Lake? So the question is, are we able to offset the supplies currently coming from Mono Lake by developing these local resources? Or cleaning these local resources.
Thank you for that. So yeah, the goal is to have our system be significantly more dependent on local supplies in average years. And that is the expectation, the 70% local supply. The challenge is we don't have a way to predict when these extreme or severe climate change driven weather patterns are going to affect supplies in general. We anticipate that we will always have some need to have a complete portfolio that includes imported supplies to supplement those local supplies here in the city. So there is, I don't have any specific information regarding Mono Lake supplies in particular, but I know that our aqueduct supplies are very much part of what we rely on for the portfolio to be complete and to have reliability in the long term. So local supply reliability is definitely what is driving these programs. And at the same time, we need to have the portfolio be solid on all terms, both imported and local supply. And that includes the aqueduct supplies, of course, supplemented when allowed with various different sources. I'm not as close to the Mono Lake situation, so if that's something that we can explore further. I actually have not checked recently, but we do have an excellent source of information that's kept up to date on Eastern Sierra issues, and it is at our website, aboutyourwater.ladwp.com. So I encourage you to look up some of that information there as well, because that's going to be current and updated.
Thank you, Evelyn. Okay, this next question is about the other end of the San Fernando Valley. John Armstrong is asking, how much of the toxins that you're dealing with are coming from the Santa Susana Labs nuke-related toxins, and is it possible to differentiate them from other San Fernando Valley toxins? So are you seeing impacts? I know this has been an issue in Ventura County. Are you seeing impacts in terms of groundwater contamination from the Santa Susana field lab?
That's a good question, and not that I'm aware of. And the main reason is that we have plumes that have been identified, but they do not go as far west, to my knowledge, as the the Santa Susana lab in terms of the plumes that are impacting our well fields. So our well fields are impacted by plumes that have been studied and defined, but there is no continuity between geographically where the plume northeastern boundary ends and the Santa Susana lab. So I don't believe that there's connectivity there. So I'm not aware of any connection.
Okay, thank you, Evelyn.
Mhm.
All right, Rob, I'm gonna suggest this question is for you.
All
It's from
right.
You
It
know
looks
what?
like it.
Stick with Robert for a minute.
I was just chilling here, relaxing. while
Okay, well, get
Evelyn was
ready.
doing all the
Th-
work.
This question's from Melita Watson. She says, I see local water districts starting to retreat already tertiary treated wastewater with reverse osmosis to get it to drinking water quality. Our water districts are making a huge effort to distinguish this from toilet to tap. Calling what they're doing using poop water is not helpful from the public outreach perspective. So we want our community to embrace clean water in our aquifers and in our kitchen sinks. So language matters. Can you consider this perspective moving forward? Maybe you can talk a little bit about what work you guys have done in trying to address consumer sentiment about recharging with treated wastewater.
Didn't I say at the beginning of this presentation that I and Connor are grumpy old men? And I never said poop water, I said purified poop water. And when I started 20 years ago, they wouldn't let me say we were taking toilet water. But the fact of the matter is we are, and we need to accept it. There are no new water molecules on the planet. All the water that has ever been consumed is all recycled. And so I think everyone needs to understand that technology makes that water clean. We've been putting recycled, purified poop water into our aquifers for 60 years and with no ill effects. So I think we need to be a little lighthearted about it and honest with people and say, this is where our water is coming from. So I appreciate the comment, and I'm not trying to be negative, merely forthcoming.
Okay, well, Rob, you got props from Melina on her next comment, which is that she loves the acronym
there you
Water
go.
Independence
I'm
Now.
batting 50-50 now.
Okay, but I do want to say, just because I know we're involved in it with the Pure Water Project Metropolitan's involved with, there is a large collaborative discussion going on about communications on recycled water. And we're aware that one of the historic challenges has been the suspicious origin of this or suspect origin of this water supply. And some of what the research has shown is that we do need to be upfront about where the water comes from and really emphasize the science and technology that is purifying this supply. So I'm not sure I would say poop water, but I know that this is something that we're trying to work through right now with the communities to make sure they recognize the value in this supply. Okay, okay, we've got enough. I'm going to read it because I said I would. We have an anonymous attendee that says instead of poop water, let's call it no crap tap or NCT. So there you go. And that's going to be the end of that discussion. Kathy, wait a minute, where do we go? I just got, Diane Wallace has a question about the Hyperion plant. And she's wanting to know if we're aware of efforts to eliminate odors, terrible odors that are coming from the plant that are impacting El Segundo. So I don't know, Rob, if you are familiar with this, or if Evelyn, you can address this issue, or we need somebody from LA-SAN to address.
This is an LA-SAN operational issue that I would not have any current information on to be able to properly address this. I know that there are efforts to address odors. I just don't know exactly what they are and what the current efforts are at this point.
No, it's a problem.
It is, and it's I clearly the LA-SAN team is aware of the situation, and if there are odors impacting, then that's something that I I would assume that they are addressing. I just don't know
Oh,
what the steps
they're
are.
working, yeah, Evelyn, they're working very hard on that.
Yes.
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 We talk to them often about it. Yes.
Okay, thank you. The next question that I'm identifying is coming from Jared Lee. And it's a question for you, Evelyn, about what major challenges do you see in injecting recycled water in the East San Fernando Valley? Is that something that the city is considering in terms of a source of supply to replenish the groundwater basin?
We have taken no options off the table right now. We have, especially with Operation Next, which is the our next water supply program, really, our next source of water supply, having the purified water from Hyperion conveyed through the city, and all of the various different ways that we can utilize that water may include injection. And so the question, what challenges we would see injecting recycled water in the East San Fernando Valley? We actually had some preliminary analysis in terms of just logistically, when we inject water and at the rate that we injected could cause mounding within the groundwater, the localized areas of the aquifer where we're injecting, that may or may not allow a sustained injection rate. So we have analyses that have gone into study this, and I'm actually looking forward to see what comes out of that. In terms of injection, we have obviously regulations that allow this depending on the quality of the water. So right now, I'm not exactly sure if we have settled on injection as a definite alternative, because we're still in the planning process for Operation Next. But we are planning to spread water in the San Fernando Valley out of our Donald C. Tillman plant in one of our projects that is coming up now. It's not injection, though, that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. The next question, Rob, is for you. This is from Frank Colcord. He's asking, how is the ongoing work for the Water Replenishment District paid for? Is it property taxes?
Yeah, good question, Frank. Before WRD was started back in the 1950s, the county started a replenishment program, and it was paid for by property tax assessment. And so no matter what amount of water you used, you paid the same amount of replenishment costs as your neighbor did. We were created in '59 to change that dynamic and charge the pumpers an assessment based on how much they pump. So the more they pump, the more they pay. And it's a more a fair and equal system.
Okay, well, very good.
So no, very, very minimal property taxes are paid anymore. So it's 95% assessment.
Thank you, Rob. The next question is from Dennis Erdman, and he's asking, what are the projected treatment costs for the 3 treatment sites? So Evelyn, I believe this relates to your project.
Yeah, so I am looking up my O&M costs right now. I can come back around to this answer. We have those numbers.
All right, we'll call on you again in just a minute while you
please do come back to me.
Thank you for being on top of it and being able to do that.
Yeah, I was looking ahead going, oh, I need to look this up. Okay.
Okay, here's a sort of a generalized question, and I think, Rob, it's for you. And I'll say, instead of trying to do desal projects along the coast, can seawater intrusion be used positively by allowing it to aid in replenishing the basin and then diluting it with injected treated water or installing desal plants throughout the basin to treat it? I think you talked a little bit about some brackish desal.
Yeah, we were actually doing just exactly that. The seawater that intruded into the groundwater basin became brackish water by dilution. You could further dilute it by mixing it with treated water. But the standard is 500 parts per million for drinking water, which is a very low number. So we hope to get the salt out of the basin and prevent it from coming in the future. My dream would be in 20 years, we could fill the basin to the point where we would no longer need a barrier system, and it would simply be an equalization of the level of the groundwater with the level of seawater. But when our desalting facility is finished taking out the salt, then we may be able to use the facility to further treat lightly brackish water and mix it. So that is on the table a decade from now.
Okay, and Rob, your agency isn't working with any ocean desal.
No.
That's what I thought.
West Basin Municipal Water District, as Connor knows well, was working on an ocean desal plant, but they terminated that because ocean desal not only is environmentally more difficult, but it's also twice the cost of purified poop water.
There's that phrase. Evelyn, did you find the answer yet, or can we go on to the next question is going to be for you anyway.
Let's move to the next one. I'm still looking it up.
Okay, but this is your question too, so you'll
Yes.
have to listen with one ear and read
right.
with the other eye.
You can multitask.
You are very capable. This question is from Melanie Winter, and she's asking this three-part question. First, can you confirm that the San Fernando Valley groundwater basin has 505,000 acre-feet of available storage space? And that's question one. Do you have 505,000 acre-feet of available storage space in the San Fernando Valley groundwater basin? The second question is, the yield increased to roughly 25% between 1984 and 2005. Has it continued to increase? And if so, at what point will you hit, Melanie, I'm sorry, the NSY limit?
Native safe yield.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then are the plans to renegotiate the native safe yield?
As always, extremely informed questions from Melanie Winter. Good to hear from you, Melanie. I actually do not have a good answer for you because these are questions much better answered by our ULAR water master. The Upper Los Angeles River Area Water Master is really the source of this information, and I do not have what the current storage capacity is. That number seems to be right to me, but I would not be able to confirm that today. In terms of whether there are plans to reevaluate the native safe yield, again, those are questions that our water master hopefully would be able to answer. I don't know that he's on the line, and I'm not going to put him on the spot, but it's a question that's been discussed and explored over the years. So I'll have to defer to the ULAR water master on that.
And water master, if you are on the line, you can pass Evelyn a private note and let us know if she's got an answer. Let's go back to Rob then for the next question from Charming Evelyn. Rob, you showed in one of the slides that there's a lot of capacity for groundwater storage in both the central and west basins. Do you think we can reach the maximum storage capacity at some point within those two basins?
I would hope we never reach the maximum storage capacity, because we hope we are always using that water to augment our supply, so that yes, you theoretically could reach the maximum, but you would draw the water down immediately to use it. So again, you think of our groundwater basin, you think of it as a reservoir. Let it go up in the wet years and be drawn down in the dry years to provide a supplement to our water supply. So I hope it never reaches a maximum, to be honest with you, because I hope we use it efficiently.
Okay, thank you, Rob. And I've got a few more questions here. So I could go to BJ Atkins, and he's asking, could or should we as an industry continue to adopt the phrase purified water to denote the source of reinjection? The perception of the public would be much better and resistance to acceptance not as high. Already encountered public resistance to any mention of treatment of water affected by fecal matter. So Pure Water is the name of the Metropolitan and the joint project between Metropolitan Water District and Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts. It's also the name that's used for the Las Virgenes Recycled Water Project and the City of San Diego's. So there is been an effort to try to use the concept of this purified water. But Rob, can you address that?
Yeah, and I think every recycled water project in the state of California and probably in the country uses purified because that's really what it is. Our contact with people is such, and my personal contact with people is such, if you explain to them how you're treating the water and how you're either injecting that water or spreading that water, they're satisfied with the answer. And our pumpers and ourselves monitor the quality of that water every month for the entire year, every year. So if there was a problem, we would certainly detect it. And we have been doing spreading of tertiary treated water and our spreading grounds, and for 60 years, there has never been a problem.
Thank you, Rob. And I think you're checking the questions and comments as I'm going through these. Please do, because there's some more compliments for you in there. I'm going to go to another question from Melanie Winter, and this is for you, Rob. She's asking if you can speak to conversations you've had with LA County Public Works regarding their proposed 40-foot diameter bypass tunnel, taking stormwater out of the LA River at Griffith Park and discharging it south of downtown LA.
I just lost the question.
Okay, well, let me just, you can just listen if you want. Can you speak to conversations you've had with County Public Works regarding their proposed 40-foot diameter bypass tunnel, taking stormwater out of the LA River at Griffith Park and discharging it south of downtown LA?
Personally, no, I have not spoken to them, but I think it's a great idea. I have personally tried to convince the Army Corps of Engineers that we need to create injection systems in the LA River channel, at least in the low flow portion of the LA River channel, to no avail. So any effort that can be done to capture that stormwater is certainly going to be beneficial.
There's a great article about some of the challenges and the delays in being able to capture more stormwater. So thank you for that question. The last couple questions we've got, this is from an anonymous attendee. Do we know that existing treatment technologies remove drugs and pharmaceuticals from the purified water? Rob, you want to take that question?
Yeah, we do extensive testing of our water. If you can take salt out of water, you can take any pharmaceutical out of water, because pharmaceuticals are all long chain molecules and they're much larger than salt molecules.
This next question is related, and it's from Melina Watts, just asking, how do we handle water or wastewater that's been irradiated by cancer treatments? Are you familiar with what the hospitals and centers do to deal with that supply?
Yeah, they cannot put it directly into the sewer if it's been treated with nuclides.
And what happens? Do you know what happens to it then?
They have to store it as medical waste, and they have to take it to a certified waste disposal site.
So it's not, bottom line is it's not getting into
It
water
does not go to a sewage treatment plant.
Okay. I'm sure there are questions about where it does go and how that works, but
And that I don't know.
yeah, thank you. All right, the last question until we ask Evelyn for the answer to the earlier one is from Charming. And she is asking, I think philosophically, can we market wind to the Central Valley to help with their recharge? So they've got some
Yes.
groundwater issues in the Central Valley of the state. So do you own that term, or is it a free up for grabs?
We will happily license it.
Always good to make sure your bottom line is benefiting
Yes.
from whatever you've done. So Evelyn, we're back to
We would
you.
be happy to let them use it.
Thank you, Rob. Evelyn, were you able to find the
Uh, yeah, so what I found was were some early estimates on the operation and maintenance of the facilities that we're actualizing. We're in the process of actualizing now, since they're going to be coming online in the latter part of this year. And it's roughly $11 million a year, including labor costs, operations, materials, equipment, et cetera. It is not cheap to operate these facilities, but the part of the analysis that was done was about the alternative, which would have been to continue purchasing imported water from MWD. And so that was the cost comparison that we were doing for the new restored capacity of these wells and the operation and maintenance of the treatment until the plume is addressed.
Very good. Okay.
And we'll
Well,
be
thank you.
actualizing those numbers and making sure that they're still accurate.
Okay, and good luck to you in pursuing the responsible parties that were part of the pollution in the first place. And I know there's some legacy contaminants that we don't have an owner for, but
Yeah.
it's really good news that there's going to be the opportunity to store more water in the groundwater basins in the region. And with that, I'd like to turn our program back over to Connor to close us out for today and to thank our speakers.
All right. I want to thank all the speakers. I want to thank all the participants. We actually had a excellent actual dialogue and discussion with enough time to answer everyone's questions, and I appreciate that. I just did want to make one comment, for those of us that have been in the recycled water world and the euphemisms around it. I think Orange County Water District's approach that went from a don't ask, don't tell to being very upfront and saying, we're cleaning up sewer water so it's cleaner than what comes out of your tap, explaining the details and doing a lot of ongoing education, because it always needs to be ongoing, I think has helped to the point where we had problems, especially in the East Valley project, probably back in the 90s and early 2000s, where public acceptance, or I would say political will, wasn't necessarily following the need for the project. So the other rule was never try to implement one of these projects during a mayoral campaign. But at this point, I think we've gotten past that, but it still takes a lot of education. And I guess Rob and I are not maybe just grumpy, but also try to use a little humor in it. But people should understand this may be cleaner than what comes out of their tap already. So I think that's important. I think Orange County Water District's a good example of how they've done that. And they've continued to expand their plant to 130,000 acre feet, which is impressive. And just taking people on educational tours of it, I think has done a lot as well. So anyway, hopefully we've moved on from that, but we always need to educate people because there's a lot of often fear and misinformation as well. So our next water dialogue is the fourth Wednesday, March 22nd. Please let us know your feedback, good, bad, and indifferent. If it's good, tell everyone else. If it's bad, you can tell me, and we'll try to improve it as we go. So someone asked me by text if the chat was available. It's not available to everybody. It's just, it goes directly to our technical team, including Joanne and the panelists themselves. So I just wanted to clear that up. I wanted to thank especially Kathy Caldwell, who coordinates these, and my co-chair Dee for doing the questions. And of course, our two presenters today, And we look forward to further topical discussions and get ready for big rain and snow on Friday. The latest I've seen is it may be historic, even at low levels. And that Los Angeles may be getting more rain than the rest of the state, and Mount Baldy may have more snow from this storm than any other place in the West. So we live in exciting times and interesting. So
Climate
we're-
change.
it's the extremes of climate change are real, and we are experiencing them. And so we have to not just think of drought or flood, but this is, as someone said, I think in Rob's presentation, this is a new normal to expect both and to plan for the driest day plus fire. Thank you all very much.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Thank you.